Episode 145 of CppCast with guest Bartłomiej Filipek, recorded April 11th, 2018. And by JetBrains, maker of intelligent development tools to simplify your challenging tasks and automate the routine ones. JetBrains is offering a 25% discount for an individual license on the C++ tool of your choice, CLion, ReSharper C++, or AppCode. Use the coupon code JetBrains for CppCast during checkout at jetbrains.com. In this episode, we talk about CppCon and Octal Zero. Then we talk to Bartłomiej Filipek from Xara. Bartłomiej talks to us about blogging, simplifying C++ code, and text processing. Welcome to episode 145 of CppCast, the only podcast for C++ developers by C++ developers. I'm your host, Rob Irving, joined by my co-host, Jason Turner. Jason, how you doing today?
I'm doing okay. I'm getting over a cold. It seems like every episode lately I've had some excuse for why my audio might not be perfect.
Yeah, we'll get by though. I hope you feel better soon. I'm glad to have you back in the States.
Yeah, I'm back in the States for a few weeks at least, anyhow.
Okay, well, at the top of every episode, I'd like to read a piece of feedback. This week, we got an email from Eric, and he writes, it would be cool to have Brett Wilson on for the GN build system. It's the Chromium meta build tool, and it's awesome. Few seem to be aware of it. And I don't know about you, Jason, but I was definitely not aware of it.
I am not aware of it, no. And I'm also... and I'm afraid to say it this time, not aware of who Brett Wilson is. Because the last comment I made on that, when we were discussing the standalone C++ proposal, I got called out on Slack for not knowing who that person was who made the proposal. So,
Did you get called out by the author? Because I know you were talking with him recently, right?
It was by someone else who knew the author, and then we all got in touch, and I was talking to the author then after that.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't know everything, but that's why we're here to talk about stuff. And maybe we can get Brett Wilson on the show, learn a little bit more about this Chromium-based build tool.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we'd love to hear your thoughts about the show as well. You can always reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, or email us at feedback@cppcast.com. And don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes. One other just a little bit of housekeeping I wanted to do before we get into the guest. We, did that survey and we got a lot of feedback. We're still going through it all. But one thing that came out of it is there seemed to be some interest in listeners being able to get CppCast t-shirts and stuff like that. And Jason and I, when we go out to conferences, we'll often bring shirts with us to give out. But there's only so many that we can actually physically bring to a conference. And if you don't make it to a conference, you might not ever get a chance to get one. So we opened up a shirt, an online shirt store where you can get those shirts. And you can also get like mugs and stuff. So if you have any interest in doing that, it's shop.spreadshirt.com/CppCast. And for like the first week and a half or so, you can get a discount because we just opened.
Yeah, I thought the sweatshirts looked pretty nice, the hoodies. I might get one myself, actually.
Yeah, I was thinking of getting a hoodie myself, too.
And also, on the topic of why it's important to go to conferences, you said we try to bring t-shirts. You have put in the order for C++ Now t-shirts, correct?
Yes, so you will have some to give out at C++ Now.
So if you're going to C++ Now, hit me up for a CppCast t-shirt. I will have a box of them.
Okay. Joining us today is Bartłomiej Filipek. Bartłomiej, or Bartek, is a C++ software developer at Xara, where he works mostly on text features for advanced document editors. He works remotely from Cracow, Poland. Apart from graphics applications, Bartek also has experience with game development, large-scale systems for aviation, writing graphics drivers, and even biofeedback. For 7 years, Bartek has been regularly blogging. In the early days, the topics revolved around graphics programming, and now he focuses on core C++. In his spare time, he loves assembling trains and Legos with his little son, and he's a collector of large Lego Star Wars models. Bartek, welcome to the show.
Hello, and thanks for having me today.
There's a couple things we have to ask about there. I want to ask about your C++ experience, but instead I'm going to ask about the Lego models.
Yeah.
Because
those.
Like?
Do you have like the Death Star and like the Imperial Star Destroyer and like the really big ones?
No. So I actually skipped those first few sort of iterations of those models, but and it was they were very expensive at that time.
Oh yeah.
So now I'm collecting. So I have TIE Fighter, so the largest one. And the biggest model that I have is probably the Sand Crawler. It's like in 2015. It's almost 4,000 Lego pieces.
Wow.
So of course we have right now a Falcon Millennium, which is like almost 8,000 pieces, but it's far more than $1,000, I think. so it's super expensive, and even super hard to get it, because it's so popular. Yeah. So maybe I will do it next time. I will buy it next time. But yeah. So those models, and I have. Star Destroyers, but those little versions, so mid scale mostly.
My son,
of course, I have the Saturn V, which is this is also a space a space model that they released last year.
My son has a couple Star Wars Lego models, and I am always eyeing up some of them for myself. He doesn't always keep them together. I think the biggest one he has is like an Ewok tree village one, but a lot of times he'll put them together and then eventually they'll just wind up as a pile of loose Legos, and I just kind of wish he would just keep them together because they're so nice to look at.
My models are also mostly on display, but my son noticed them, and now they are also quite broken. So I need to wait a few years until he also maybe he will help me to bring them back together. Yeah, so that's the risk with kids.
Yeah,
that's a tricky thing with those large Lego models too. I mean, Lego is meant to be played with, and to just build it once and then let it sit there is
exactly. Those all the details are quite delicate, so you don't want to swash them around and play.
Well, right.
Okay, well, Bartek, we have a couple news articles to discuss. Feel free to comment on any of these, and then we'll start talking to you more about your blog and your work you're doing at Xara. Okay?
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
Okay, so this first article is CppCon 2018 call for submissions. We've been looking forward to this coming out, and the deadline for submissions is May 11th, and decisions are going to be sent out July 1st. Jason, you know what you're proposing yet?
I have two ideas.
Okay.
One is relatively safe that I'm pretty sure would get accepted, and the other one is completely not. And I haven't decided which one I'm going to propose, but I'm pretty sure I'm only going to propose one of them.
Okay, because last year you did at least 2-3 talks, right?
I think I did 2 last year.
2 last year? Okay.
But I'm trying to keep up my role that I have going here, that I'm doing one only at C++ now. I'm going to see if I can do one only at CppCon also. And
okay, and the other thing I wanted to mention is John Kolb recently posted this blog where he's talking about how to present a talk idea, basically. So if you have trouble thinking of talk ideas like I do, this is probably a good blog post to read. Yeah. Is there anything either guys wanted to comment on with either of these?
So I think basically the listening to the community is important. So you can, if you want to look for some ideas, then I don't know, just go to Reddit CPP and just look for the most popular topics, and probably if you came up with a sort of similar idea, then that talk might be really wanted and needed. So maybe that's a good start.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, we have a long post on Reddit. Lots of comments on this one, and this is about the SG13 graphics proposal, which we've talked about a couple times recently, and how that did not proceed at the last ISO C++ meeting. And this post is titled "SG13 Graphics and Why It Failed." And it's a pretty interesting read. We can't summarize everything here, but it basically goes into the full history of the proposal from this author's perspective and why he thinks it has been voted down now. And it was definitely interesting to read. Like, I didn't realize that it seems like there was a lot of feedback given kind of early on, and from this author's perspective, that feedback was somewhat ignored. And they're saying that's why the state of the proposal as it is not good, and why we don't need it in the standard. And that's, according to this author's perspective.
Yeah, the way I understood this, the original proposal, the original intent is that it would be something just like SFML or SDL, or just a simple, we want input and output and some sort of buffer to draw things into to be part of the standard.
Right.
Which I think I totally would be on board with that one, and I did not ever understand how it became basically this Cairo-like thing, and apparently, well, the author of this article isn't entirely sure, it seems, how it became the Cairo-like thing.
It seems like what he's saying, at least, is that, Michael McLaughlin, who's the main person who's worked on the 2D graphics proposal, kind of just latched on to Cairo and didn't want to change gears, even though, as I said, he got feedback saying, this isn't really a great library to base a standard on. Yeah.
So actually, that would be quite useful library for teaching, right? Because right now, if you want to start with C++ with teaching, or if you learn the basics, then all you can do with using the standard library and your compiler is to just create a console application, which is quite boring in today, right? Where we have all of those fancy GUI applications and web applications. So having sort of simple 2D graphics would be quite an advantage, right? For maybe that wouldn't be used for production, at least not in the early version of that, but maybe later. Why not? And I think that. The .NET, so C# and Java have those abilities, right?
Yeah.
So you can do those simple stuff. So maybe we are not ready enough. Maybe we need to fix some more important stuff like modules and concepts, and then maybe after 5 years, maybe we'll return to that topic. But yeah, so and of course introducing graphics is not that simple, right? Because they also mentioned the input, so window support. And maybe even audio. I've heard something. Yeah, so that's not that super easy to standardize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Jason, do you want to introduce this next one?
Yeah, I just thought it was fun to mention that Microsoft has released the source code to WinFile, to the file manager for Windows. The one that was in Windows 3.1.
Right, so this is like the precursor to the current File Explorer?
I think it's the precursor to the current File Explorer. Okay. Windows NT 4 was when it was last actively updated. Originally released with Windows 3.0.
Wow.
So the source is out there, but more importantly, it can compile with a Visual Studio today, run on Windows 10.
Yeah, so it looks like what they did is they released the original source, but then they also released a patch or a separate branch that can compile with the current version of Visual Studio, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
But just to be clear, it is not C++. It is all pure C.
Pure C.
No, I've even downloaded that and compiled, and it really works. So in a matter of seconds, Visual Studio was able to build that. And yeah, but it's without any classes. I've even run the source code against this visual tool called SourceTrail, and it showed me like 38 structs, those C-style structs with all of the free functions lying around. and there was like one C++ class, so even with some templates, but it was probably added quite later in the production. Yeah, so
Right.
so it's cool maybe for historical reasons, but it's not the source code that you would like to learn modern C++.
No.
No, absolutely
But on the
not.
other hand, maybe it would be interesting to see the modern C++ version of that. So if someone refactored the code, yeah, but that's probably not that super easy anyway.
That would be really cool, actually, to see. I just
That's
noticed.
proposal for a talk.
Yeah, there you go. Someone out there should propose that and do it.
Yeah.
I did notice that all their uses of void is all capital void. Like it was somehow it can't be pre-standard void. Void's been around since the beginning of C, right? Hasn't it? Pretty sure it has.
Probably. I don't.
Sounds right.
Maybe
but
not.
All of the Win API types are uppercase. So like int 32, long, dwart. So all of those types are
Yeah.
uppercase. So maybe that's their convention.
Just their convention.
So that is step one in your modernization, is to use the correct types.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the other blog post I want to talk about is this one, Octal 0 considered harmful. And I'll be honest, I don't think I was aware that having a 0 at the beginning of a number meant it was going to be an octal number in C++.
Okay.
I'm not sure if this is common knowledge or if it was just something I've never run into. But, we all know, 0x is going to be a hex number. Apparently, just using a 0 at the beginning of a number is making it an octal. And I completely agree with this author that that's dangerous and is probably causing lots of potential bugs. And the alternative he suggests is to have 0 and then lowercase o to precede octal numbers, which Python and I think D also does. And I think that makes sense. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Just added in C++ 17, or because I also skipped that.
I
think it's always been the case in C or C++ is my
it
understanding.
was inherited from C, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So
And I am aware of it because Chai script's number handling is the same as C++'s, so I've had to deal with parsing these types of numbers. But I can say I've never done that. I've never prefixed as far as I know, I've never accidentally put an octal number in my source code.
I was looking through the comments on this one a little bit, and someone pointed out, one way to get into this is if you're writing out like a date string, and you say, okay, the month is 09, day is 31. Well, the 09 isn't going to compile because that's turns into an octal, and there is no 9 in octal. But I guess if it's between 0 and 7, and you're preceding it with a 0, it doesn't make a difference.
Well, and then if it's between 08 and 09, that is, then you're going to get a compile time error.
Right.
And then if it was 10, it's no longer going to be interpreted as octal, so it wouldn't actually cause a problem in any case.
Right. I mean, I'm sure there's still places where... Oh, I guess... I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But, I mean, the Reddit comments are full of people saying, this has bitten me, I had broken code because of this. I've never experienced it, but there's apparently, many people have.
Yeah. Yeah, I think changing to use the convention of 0 makes a lot of sense. Hopefully... I guess someone has to make a paper, though, to go advocate for that, right?
Yeah, it would break so much existing code, probably, to deprecate that. I mean, anything that is actually working with file modes on Unix and wants octal is going to have a problem. So it would break a lot of existing C code, probably, but not very much existing C++ code.
Well, they could at least start by adding in, 0O as an alternative.
Oh, yeah.
Using just 0. And
or
then maybe deprecate it in a later date.
Warnings.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if any compiler has a warning you used octal.
Yeah, please don't use that.
Yeah.
Okay, so Bartek, we did a news episode last week, and we did talk about one of your blog posts. We've talked about your blog post several times over the course of our show. But this last one was an April Fool's joke post.
Yes.
And I did want to ask, did you coordinate with other blog authors? Because there were like at least 3 posts that all had kind of a similar content.
Exactly. So
Okay.
that was our secret mission. So actually, I got that idea last year, right? So I've announced that we will have C++ 18, and then so that was my first April Fool's joke, and then so for this year I decided that maybe it would be nice to collaborate and also have someone with me. So I talked with Jonathan Bucara from Fluent C++. And then we also invited other people. So it's Jonathan Bucara, Jonathan Miller, Simon Brand, and Rainer Grimm from Modern C++. So we basically discussed various topics since March, and then we came up with the single idea. And then we decided to go for that. Yeah, so that was quite interesting experience. Also in terms of blogging and how that will all go, because it was also it was Sunday, so it was out of anyone's blog schedule. So that was also quite suspicious, and it was also Easter, right? So it was another point for that maybe people wouldn't go for that, right? And they will immediately see it as a joke. But I was very surprised because I got like 50,000 views on that blog post.
Wow.
Only in 2 days, which is like half of my monthly traffic. And even Jonathan's Fluent C++, his site was crushed for a good time because of the traffic. I think that Jonathan's post got onto Reddit programming, and he got like 2,000 upvotes, which is massive. So yeah, so basically his database said no, and he got crushed his website. Yeah. So, but apart from that. Last year I had this idea about C++ 18, and there was also a moral behind that. So that was not all the crazy idea, because you could at that moment test various C++ features that would go maybe into C++ 20, and with this deprecation of raw pointers. There's also a moral to that, because right now in modern C++, you can't go away for many times without raw pointers, right? So you have smart pointers, you have all of the wrappers, and you have also references, right? So those were that are in C++ for ages. So basically, the moral of that story is, while I don't see that it would be possible to remove raw pointers from the standard, because that's how it is. But we have good alternatives today, and we should use that, right? So I think that in core guidelines, right, there is a strong opinion that you shouldn't be using raw, new, and delete, right? So if you want to allocate some memory, then maybe you just need a container, right? So use std vector or other container. So the moral is that while that would be quite crazy idea, but still, maybe in modern C++, you shouldn't be using raw pointers that often, right? so maybe people got attention to that.
So I thought I saw that this idea, proposal, whatever the April Fool's version of it actually ended up with an official paper number, or was I reading something different?
No. I don't think there was a paper. In my blog post, I specifically avoided putting any papers because there was no paper. We only linked between our blog posts. So maybe so in my section, in my paragraph where I sort of specified that, I linked to Rainer's article, and he also linked to other blog posts. So we have this circular reference in our links. So I specifically avoided. I don't know because I don't recall all of our blog posts. Maybe someone mentioned that, but from my point of view, there was no paper on that. Maybe we should propose that. So for sure, I don't believe while we can avoid a lot of raw pointers in sort of client's codes, I don't believe we can go away with them in library, right? Where so all of the iterators and those kinds of stuff are based on pointers. So I think that if you are a library developer, then living without pointers would be even harder.
Yeah. So on the topic of your blog, how often do you normally post? What's your regular schedule, or do you have one?
So I try to post once per week. So that's my idealistic schedule, but it's not that easy, and often I go into like once per 2 weeks. So it's I try to do like between 3 and 5 articles per month. So that works for me. Also, some time ago, I think it's like a year ago, I also started my newsletter. So it's around 5,000 people at the moment in that list. And I write weekly to that, really weekly to that group. So even if I don't have the article, the new article, I still mention some news or some good stuff from C++ world. So that's my plan for today. So I'm quite lousy in creating sort of buffer for my articles. So
yes.
So even if you are not motivated, you should have some at least 1 or 2 buffered posts that you can just post them. But it was quite hard for me to do it. I always have planned to do that, but it's not the implementation is not working yet. So for example, I'm very amazed with Jonathan's Bocara Fluent C++ blog because he blogs like twice per week, which is really, really, really amazing. And you had him on the show before, So, but in terms of the schedule, I found, because I've moved to that schedule, I think like 2 years ago. At least to that ideal schedule. And before that, I wrote an article where I had idea, or where I had a sort of, I don't know, surge of energy or something like that, or vein. But and it worked, and I could create some articles, but. But when I decided to go for a weekly schedule or once per 2 weeks, that actually boosted my productivity and actually creativity, right? Because if you have a deadline, then you are actually, your brain actually is forced to think about and came up with some ideas. So actually that worked for me, and so it boosted my creativity in terms of blog ideas. So I have like, I don't know, 100 of potential blog articles that I can write, so that schedule is really, really good, and of course that improves your traffic, right? Because if you are more or less consistent, then it works very well.
Definitely.
So that's, and you probably see it also on CppCast. It's not weekly, but I think that people are used to it, right? Yeah. So you used to have something on Friday. So that's really, really good stuff.
So what exactly is in your newsletter? If it's not just, taking your blog post and emailing it out, what exactly goes into a newsletter?
So I'm experimenting with various forms, and so for sure, if I have an article, then I'll add some introduction to that. So it's not just like you would get with RSS, so automatic. That's, hey, you have a new article, and that's all. I do some introduction, I do some outro, and maybe I ask some questions about that. So that's sort of a sort of easy way to introduce the post. I believe that maybe people are more interested in the article when they read some intro from that email. I also mentioned if there's some news around. I think so. Recently, before Jacksonville meeting, there was some papers about the overall guidance of the overall road for C++. So I mentioned that. So I read that very briefly, very quickly, and tried to mention that in my newsletter. So that was only in that newsletter. You wouldn't see that on anywhere on the website. So so I'm experimenting with that. Ideally, I'd like to have expand the news section. But it also takes time, right? So I don't have it right now, and so I'm sort of playing around with the structure. I'm also introducing some good tools if I have a chance to play with them. So mostly that. So I think that's additional value for just being a reader of my blog articles.
Okay. So on your website, in your bio, you mentioned that your first C++ book was C++ in 24 hours.
Yes.
I'm very curious about that. I've never picked up one of those, like some language in 30 days or 24 hours or whatever kind of book.
Yes, actually, it's quite interesting story behind, because I have this book with me. This is
oh wow,
this is quite worn.
The Polish translation of it. Yeah.
This is of course the Polish version. It's very worn out because it has like maybe even 17 or 18 years. So I bought that together with my two friends. It was probably before my high school, so it was my first programming book. And so on this bookshelf that we had, there was many titles, but not many about C++. And that was probably the only beginners level book. At that time, we were playing computer games, and I think that we thought that C++ is quite good for gaming. So we picked C++ as the first programming language. So we chipped in and we bought that book, and the story is that out of those three guys that bought that book, two of them are actually programming right now for gaming. So
Nice.
that's actually quite good ratio. I bought the full shares from them for that book. So that's my so this is only my copy right now. Yeah, so I think that's a good ratio for a book. if you can learn someone and 66% of them is actually then ending up as a computer sciences. And even I ended with and stayed with C++. The other guy, I think he's some more into web development. Yeah, but still it's good. And I don't have any issues with that book, because it learned everything that I needed. Of course, it's I think it's from 99, so it's even before C++ 03. So it's very, very, very old standard. But I think that there is a updated version, like 6 or 7th edition, that mentions for sure C++ 14. I'm not sure about C++ 17. And of course the author is Jesse Liberty, who is well-known author. So and I think that that even on the latest copy, he's the co-author, because he moved, I think, more to .NET languages, but still he named that book. So yeah, I believe Jesse Liberty is an amazing author. So I got lucky to be introduced to that to C++ through that book. I think.
Cool.
Hey everyone, quick interruption to let you know that after running our listener survey, we have decided to start a Patreon page. We're still planning to support the show with sponsorships, but if we get some additional support from patrons, we're going to look into improving the audio quality of the show and more. So, if you're interested in supporting the show directly through Patreon, check us out at patreon.com/CppCast. I wanted to ask about a series of blog posts that you wrote on C++ 17 last year, including this post on simplifying C++ code with C++ 17. What are some of your favorite new features for simplifying code that you were writing about there?
Yeah, so the whole series was quite interesting, because I picked a schedule. Every 2 weeks I will create an article about that, and I ended with like 8 articles about all of the features. So the thing was that I often needed to read most of the papers, because at that time there was no books about C++ 17 or examples or other articles. So it was quite interesting experience and also motivating experience to that. So I think that the feature that are most popular is actually not maybe the language feature that we have. They of course improve the ability to write a more expressive code, but the library features, right? And even I ran a survey on my blog asking about experience with C++ 17, and one of the most popular features was those stood optional variant, string views, probably even searchers for strings, and of course file system. So actually, because thanks to the library, you can actually do more tasks, right? So it's among on the second side we have language features like and amazing feature of cons expression if. But still, if we have more libraries and more tools from the library, we can do more stuff through that. So yeah, so those. If I can expand, so I believe that in terms of simplification. In general, in modern C++ and in C++ 17, we have like four features, four main points. So the first is the language. So things like if cons expression, those structured bindings, then template deduction for classes, and I remember. A quite powerful sentence from one conference, from Code Dive conference in Wrocław, and there was a talk about C++ 17, and the author of the talk is Mark Isaacson, I believe, and he explained if cons expressions, and he basically told that before C++ 17 you had all of the crazy and quite complicated expressions to write if statement, right? Because all you do with enable if or tag dispatching is actually expressing if, right? So if at compile time. And I believe I'm not template expert. And for me, reading that code is quite hard, and I believe for beginners or even intermediate people, it's quite hard to get everything and then write the same code. So but with if cons expression, then you have so Mark Isaacson mentioned that they lowered the need of magic in C++. So this idea of reducing magic. Actually, I remember that quite strongly, and that's true about the standard. So we have more and more features that actually reduce the need to be full meta programming expert, right? And so that greatly simplifies the code. And so that was the first point. So in general, language features. Also, there is this inline variables that you can basically write header only libraries. The second part is the standard library itself. So as we've talked, so like things like file system, threads are of course from C++11, but we have more and more additions to the standard. We have those parallel algorithms that got introduced, and we can expect more stuff in later version of C++20. So the tools, and then we have so that was STL and the library that you can do things with that, and then we have the tools, and especially I think that we have a great year for tooling support. So a lot of the time I've heard that C++ is very hard to parse and analyze, and it's true, but still we have probably the computing power right now to actually crack the code and then add useful additions to our IDEs, right, to our compiler. So Visual Studio, I'm sort of glued to with Visual Studio because that's my preferred environment.
Sure.
And I'm really impressed with the pace that they are releasing. So we have like 6 version or even 7 version right now with this C++ with Visual Studio 2017.
Right.
And before that, for Visual Studio 2015, we got like maybe 3 major updates. We have now 7 for Visual Studio 2017. So that's and they also rather than inventing as Microsoft Visual Studio, rather than inventing new features, they sort of also bring other tools together, like CMake. They've merged CMake into Visual Studio. So that was quite. That's quite useful for me because often when I download something from GitHub, I have only CMake, and then it was quite maybe not hard, but confusing to me to generate Visual Studio solution through CMake. And right now Visual Studio recognizes everything, and so and does all the things in background. So that's we get easier and easier with tools. Of course, there are other, and also I've noticed that this is mainly because Clang, right? Because Clang enabled to use Clang infrastructure that is super. I don't know from the coder's perspective, but as I know, it's quite easy to extend, right? So you can build a lot of analyzers on top of that. So you can in theory easily extend that and build your tools around Clang. So that's that's really powerful. And so we have even in Visual Studio we have Clang power tools, right? So we can run Clang tidy, Clang format, and just compile that with Clang. So that's so I think in general we have a good year for tools. And the fourth point I think is the community, right? Because there are so many good sites, and we have CPP ISO org that you can follow. So you can basically learn C++ quite easily today with a lot of great content and great communities. So I think that's also good addition here. So I basically expect to have more.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We're definitely seem to be in like a renaissance of great C++ content right now. Do you want to tell us a little?
Maybe even for some people it's too fast, right? Because often I'm also not using C++ 17 in production. Unfortunately, we are sort of between C++ 11 and 14, but I see that a lot of people are even before C++ 11, right? So if they see that I don't know, concepts are coming or ranges, so they even haven't adopted, I don't know, standard threads, right? so how to so for them keeping the pace is quite might be hard, right?
Right.
So you're just talking about working in production. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the work you do at Xara?
Yes, sure. So as a little background, Xara is relatively small company. It's around 50 people. It's supported by larger company called Magix. And Xara as a company started in 80s. So I think it was 1981 actually. It was founded. And from early days it was involved into graphics. And they released vector graphics editors, and then later I think it's from the beginning of 2000 we have powerful document editor. So it's not only the vector graphics and photo editing. It basically you can now create any kind of document. So whether that's a booklet or photo editing or vector graphics or even websites, you can create using Xara Designer. So that's the tool. And I'm C++ developer. So I work mainly on Windows platform. So for those desktop products, and as you mentioned, mainly in the text area. So things like because actually text is probably the most complicated thing at the moment in sort of that we develop. Because the text flow itself is quite complicated. So we have several algorithms that can produce a nice layout, but actually positioning the text itself is quite let's say simple. But if you include graphics into that, so ability to flow text around the graphics or embed the graphics, so embed a picture inside, then things are getting more and more complicated. And of course you have the flow, right? So the ability to flow text from one page to the other, and of course it's also performance intensive, right? Because if you have like I don't know 50-page long document full of text, then calculating the proper flow and the proper layout is quite so it's basically a lot of data to process. So that's so I was responsible for things like those main features was, for instance, keep paragraphs together. So usually if you have a heading and then the following paragraph, so like a title heading and then some introduction paragraph, then you usually want to keep them together, right? So if you don't want to end up in a situation where this heading ends up at the bottom of the page, right? And that's the last thing, and then the paragraph itself is on the second page. So you'd like to keep them together. And of course, there are situations where you have a paragraph and you want to keep all of the contents of the paragraph together on the same page. So that's super complicated because, for instance, if you have a text can flow around between pages as it likes. So for example, if you let's say have a word at the beginning of the page, and then you change the font size of that word, then for example to a bit smaller font, then it might happen that it can flow back to the previous page because it can fit there, right? Because it's a bit smaller, so it can fit there. Or if you have longer word and at the top of the page, and then you insert a space, right? So basically you break a word, and then that smaller part maybe can go to the previous page. So even if you are editing, let's say, one word in the middle of the page, then then it's not that easy just to format and recompute what's further from you, so the next position, because you also have to look back on what's before. So of course we have some optimizations, because it would be quite complicated to recompute, like in this 50-page document, recompute every letter every time you insert a new letter. So we have a few optimizations on top. But still, it's quite complex area, and so that's quite challenging. The next thing that it's not that I implemented. It was implemented a long time ago, like even 10 years or more. The flowing text around the graphics, right? So it's relatively easy if you have a text area that is that is wide and it has the same width in all of the places. But if you introduce a graphics like a photo, and you would like to flow text around, then your the different lines have different width, so formatting space that they can fit text. So it's very so then the computations are even harder, because you need to compute that space. And then you have the thing called anchored repelling, which is even more complex, because it's the problem where you have a graphics and you anchor that to text. So basically, if your text flows down, then the graphics is also flowing with that text. Right. And you can repel that, right? So even if you have anchored let's say a circular image, and then it flows with the text, and it also at the same time repels the text around. So it's basically, we are using some crazy iterative approach to handle everything. I haven't implemented that, and I hope not to fix any bug in that, because that's very, very risky. But recently we've introduced a feature called text inside. This is related to repelling, because it allows you to flow text inside any shape. So if you have like the circle, then you can put text inside, and it will nicely flow to all of the edges of the shape. So those are quite funny things that you can stumble across text programming.
Wow.
In addition to anchoring around images, I know I've heard of the concept of kerning. I'm guessing you have to do a lot of work on kerning within text, right?
Yeah, actually, I was lucky not to implement that because this is basically a font data, and my colleague is expert in font handling, and this gets really complicated, because font it's not just a description of the glyphs, so not just the points that make the shape of the letters. As I've noticed, font especially those true type fonts that we are using right now have sort of like their own language that they use to describe a lot of ligatures stuff. So basically font substitution rules. So like if you have like FFI, then it can be substituted with nicer glyph, right? So you can exchange a few letters into one nice glyph, and with all of the, even there are features like swashes and ornaments, some historical ligatures and styles. Those are called stylistic sets. Yeah, so basically, font is covered with the data of the glyphs and the rules that you should actually use to process the font and display that. Because often, if you have one character, then you need to do all of the processing, even contextual processing. So like one letter, so usually letter looks like that, but if it's surrounded with like in a word, and it creates, you have a specific word, then it's substituted to a different character and different glyph. So there are a lot of complicated rules that are hidden inside fonts. So you basically need to create a parser to analyze that and then quickly render that, right? Because that's also important. Yeah. So we are
right.
basically working on bringing all of the TrueType font capabilities to our text formatting engine. Yeah. And the other thing is, for example, hyphenation and dictionary processing. So often you can break a word, right, and then put a hyphen on at the end, and then you have a possibility to create a better layout. So that's also another part of working and creating hyphenation and enabling hyphenation engine. Was also not that easy in our products.
Jason, you have any questions?
No, sorry, my voice is wearing out.
Okay.
Actually, you need a few years to understand the details. I'm in Xara for like 3.5 years. And I can say that I'm starting to understand what's going on, but it's quite challenging area, and you can and actually you hear a lot of about those complex algorithms that are sometimes used, and document editors and all of the graphics problems are filled with those complex algorithms. So if you want to grow and you like graphics, then that's a very interesting area, and it's of course different than, for example, gaming, right, and creating
right.
game engines, but still very fulfilling and covered with a lot of interesting topics.
Interesting.
Okay.
So one thing that I could add is that we recently released a product called Xara Cloud, which is basically an online version of our powerful document editor. So previously you could use that only on Windows, but right now we have a powerful web application that is backed up with our modified version of the desktop product. So basically, inside any browser and any operating system that you have, you can use most of the powerful features that you have. So I don't know if you can put the link, but I hope that you can put the link to the demo document that you can easily create with our software. So that's basically a flowing text in 2 columns with all of the crazy repelling around. So and that's WYSIWYG. So you can even a non-experienced user can create a document like that and export export to a website or presentation or text document, whatever. So that's really good good product.
Yeah, we can absolutely put a link in the show notes for that. You also run a local users group in Poland, right? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
So actually, I'm not running that. I'm not the author of that. So actually, that's my friend. But so I have some insights about that local group. I was very positively surprised to see that Cracow starts local group, C++ local group. Other major larger cities in Poland had those groups already. So I waited for Cracow, and finally we got that group like in June last year. So we are quite young. So at the moment, so up until now, I gave 2 talks for that local group. So one was about C++ 17 features. So I gave a summary of those features, and later actually in March, so it was a few weeks ago, I gave a talk about tools. So it was a bit lighter talk. So it was about Jacksonville meeting, because it was Tuesday just after the Jacksonville meeting, and I actually your CppCast with about Jacksonville meeting helped me a lot because you discussed I of course I forgot the name of the
Patrice Roy.
Patrice,
exactly. So Patrice also gave me an example for if cons expression article that I wrote. So he's very nice and nice person that you can ask for feedback and discuss things. So I used your show and some notes to basically and prepared some current C++ 20 status, and then we also discussed and I demoed a few tools that I got chance to play around. So Visual Studio, those CMake, CMake, then Google test adapters or boost test adapters in Visual Studio, also Clank tools, yes, and even some other tools that I had a chance to play with. Yeah, so a bit lighter talk, but still it was quite nice. And I'm happy to see Cracow group, because it basically allows me to talk to someone about C++, especially since I'm working remotely, so that helps. Yes, and I heavily invite everyone to participate in their local groups, because that's a good chance to grow. We are quite young, and maybe if I have time, I hope to invest some effort into maybe expanding that form, but that's definitely great. I think that's Jens Weller, right, from Meeting C++, hosts a lot of gives a lot of support for those groups. So you have basically a guideline how to run them and how to ask for sponsors, and he brings those groups together on at least on one website. So that's a good support, right? And that's definitely easier than just, I don't know, shouting and that I want to create a group, right? So that's a more standardized form. Maybe we should have a paper on that.
Yeah, well, we will put a link to the Poland C++ group in the show notes as well. So hopefully help you find a few more attendees. It's been great having you on the show today, Bartek.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to be here with you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks so much for listening in as we chat about C++. I'd love to hear what you think of the podcast. Please let me know if we're discussing the stuff you're interested in. Or if you have a suggestion for a topic, I'd love to hear about that too. You can email all your thoughts to feedback@cppcast.com. I'd also appreciate if you like CppCast on Facebook and follow CppCast on Twitter. You can also follow me at Rob W. Irving and Jason at LeftKiss on Twitter. And of course, you can find all that info and the show notes on the podcast website at cppcast.com. Theme music for this episode is provided by podcastthemes.com. Website at cppcast.com. Theme music for this episode is provided by podcastthemes.com.